The concept for EPARTRADE is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for EPARTRADE is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to epartrade.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of EPARTRADE. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Good morning from California and welcome to Race Industry Now, the technical and business webinar series from EPARTRADE, presented to you by ARP and Performance Plus Global Logistics. I am Francis Savignan, the founder and CEO of EPARTRADE, the global platform for the performance and racing industry. This is episode 217, and we're going to be talking piston rings with Total Seal Piston Rings. With me this morning are Judy King, the co-founder of EPARTRADE, and our wonderful host, Mr. Jeff Hammond. Judy?
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Francis, and everyone. We're excited to have both Keith and Lake Speed Jr. with us on today. And I just want to mention that Lake Speed Jr., you are an inspiration in the industry and to us because you're one that nudged us into doing technical webinars. And here we are producing our 217th. So thank you for that. And I wish more people were like you.
For sure.
Today should be a good one.
How are we doing, Jeff?
I'm doing quite well and really excited about today. I haven't had the privilege of working directly with Lake Speed Jr. On our platform yet. And so today is really going to be a fun episode for me personally. I've seen, bits and pieces of some of his previous seminars, but I'm really looking forward. Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah. Morning, guys. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. How are we doing today?
Well, Judy, I appreciate the kind words. We did hear that, and that was kind of nice. So I appreciate that.
Well,
you're too kind.
It's on to you then.
In your hands, Jeff.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do the smartest thing I can do, and that is to pass it off to the powers to be, the ones that know what's going on here. I'm really interested to see what you have to share with us today, because when I read what we were going to be talking about, my mind started, I guess you might say, started spinning, and all I could do was see inside of an engine, see what a piston ring was going through. And I can only imagine all the different coatings, all the different types of lubricants, and how these piston rings have to withstand the heat, the RPMs, everything that goes into it. So please take it away and educate us.
Well, Jeff, it's funny. This morning I was thinking about you because, like I said, I've known you my whole life pretty much, because obviously my dad was racing during your career as a crew chief. So I was a little kid back then. No offense about our age, by the way. I was a teenager back then. You were a pretty young crew chief back then too, right? So
yeah.
But I was thinking about it. Remember the old days? You go to Fontana, all the West Coast races and be really hot. And everyone was talking about vapor lock, right? You got to make sure your car didn't get too hot or whatever, because you could vapor lock, the carburetor back in the day. The guys at 76 did a pretty good job of making sure they adjusted that fuel. And I really kind of think that this whole talk today, if we could, for lack of a better term, and no pun intended, distill it down to one thing, it really is about the vapor pressure of the fuel, which may sound completely off base. Someone's tuning in to watch about piston rings, and we're talking about vapor pressure of fuel, and they're going to go, what the heck are these guys talking about? Did I miss the wrong thing? And what the story? But as you're talking about, Jeff, the different coatings and everything, we do all that because essentially fuel is the enemy of your oil and your piston rings. I spent 15 plus years at Joe Gibbs Racing, developing oils. And that's all we worked on for 15 years constantly, was trying to make better lubricants for those engines. And the number one enemy of my oil was the fuel. No offense to the guys at Sunoco or VP or any other fuel company, anybody, right? But that's the thing we're after. And unfortunately, our poor little piston ring, he's the guy that's caught in the middle. Right, Keith?
The redheaded stepchild again.
Exactly. Keith always uses that term. The piston ring is the redheaded stepchild of the engine. And
we get blamed for everything.
I've known you for a long time, and you've always given that analogy at talks, right? And now that I've been here for a couple of years, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. Everyone blames the piston ring for these different things. In reality, I guess maybe the best way to talk about the fuel part for people that are maybe new to this or trying to wrap their head around talking about vapor pressure and why that matters. Winter blend versus summer blend fuel.
Absolutely.
I think most people know about that. Keith, tell me a little bit about some of the experiences that you've seen in the 25 years here, by the way, which you need to give another congratulations.
Thank you.
25 years, but last week?
Yeah, last week.
Yep. 25 years here at Total Seal. So he's seen a few things along the way.
One or two things. But as Lake said, one of the things that we deal with, on a daily basis is the different fuels that are out there. And as Lake talked about, summer blend versus winter blend here in Arizona, we've got some pretty extreme temperature swings, from being
120
in the summertime to a high of maybe 40 or 50 in the wintertime. And we have summer blends, winter blends. And just for that reason, because in the summer, as you had mentioned about vapor locking, I can, quick story. I remember running down Interstate 17 on my, at the time, ZX11 Kawasaki, rolling on down the freeway. It's about 115 degrees outside. And all of a sudden it goes, whoa, 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 whoa. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I quickly surmised I'm vapor locking and stuck the key as I'm in the HOV lane, gliding down to a halt, open the gas cap, and you heard this just whoosh. And guess what? I'm back up to speed and going down the freeway. And the point was, the bike had been sitting and I had winter fuel in the tank. I had not freshened up to summer fuel in the tank to be able to withstand those 115 degree ambient temperatures.
Right. And the thing is, the fuel, same octane.
Yep.
Right. And that's the thing that can kind of freak people out. And I know this is a very controversial statement. Octane is not the most important prospect or quality of a fuel from the piston rings perspective.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, as from a tuner's perspective, the piston's perspective and all that. Okay. Yes, I get it. Octane matters a lot if you're looking at spark timing and air fuel ratio and compression ratio and piston design. Yes. From the piston rings perspective and from the lubricants perspective, octane doesn't matter. It's the vapor pressure. It's the distillation curve of the fuel that actually what matters. Because as you alluded, Keith, we do not burn liquid fuel in the engine. Now there's liquid fuel going into the engine, but what we burn isn't liquid. You can only burn vapor. Like if we had a 55-gallon drum of fuel right here, and we put a spark plug inside the drum, and we hit the ignition, nothing happens. But if you take that same drum, take the lid off of it, take that spark plug and put it about 3 inches above it and then hit it, then bang, we're all gone.
You're losing the hair on your arm.
Right. I mean, we're gone, right? Because it's a big
Can I
boom.
leave the building first?
Yes, you can leave the building first. Yes, please. Let's leave the building first. So I think a lot of people don't catch that fact that it's that liquid has to turn into a vapor. And that's what, carburetors are so good at for so long, was taking that liquid fuel, atomizing it so that it's a small droplet. That small droplet is easier to actually convert to a vapor. So these are the kind of things that you need to think first about, because our good buddy Ben Strader at EFI University.
Yep.
We did some testing a few years ago with him on direct injection engines. So it's really, direct injection engines are fantastic because you can run a higher compression ratio, so your horsepower per cubic inch potential is greater. And the trick is they're actually putting the injector in the combustion chamber. So the fuel that's going through the manifold and down past the valve and all that, there's no fuel in that. It's just air. It's just air going in the engine. The fuel is only introduced while the intake valve is open and the piston is going down. So they're spraying it in. Okay. The trick to that is there's actually less time. If you look at, a 4-cycle engine is 4 strokes. Yep. So that's 2 full rotations of the crankshaft. If you look at a degree wheel, for people who are familiar with engine building, you put a degree wheel on it, right? And it's 360 degrees. Well, 4 cycles is 720 degrees. If you actually look at the window in terms of time in degrees that the fuel has in a direct injection engine to go in, it's literally half the amount of time of what a port injected engine or a carbureted engine has. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head right now. That's why I say them, but I probably get them wrong because I can't remember on top of my head.
Ben would know.
Ben would totally know, yeah. Well, what Ben would do is he would take a calculator and act like he's figuring it up on the calculator to make you not feel as stupid, but he already did it in his head.
He already knows.
Yeah, he already knows. But the point being is, when you have that shorter window to atomize the fuel, what can easily happen is the fuel doesn't vaporize because of that very short window. And what we saw was we took 2 different fuels. One was a higher, like maybe 2 octane higher, like one's a 100 and one was a 98 octane fuels. The difference is, so the 100 octane fuel had a very low read vapor pressure, so very low tendency to turn into a vapor. Yep. The other one, the 98 one, lower octane by a little bit, had a higher vapor pressure, like double vapor pressure. So we ran both fuels through the same engine with the same spark timing, same everything. The 100 octane fuel actually knocked. So we had knock sensors on the engine so you could tell. So you're actually going into detonation with the 100 octane fuel. Flip over to the 98 octane fuel, lower octane, no knock. Why? Because the fuel is actually vaporizing. So it's actually not as lean in the combustion chamber, so less knock. More importantly, for people who live in the Southwest, right? So Keith, as a person who's lived in the Southwest for a long time, tell them about a swamp cooler. What's a swamp cooler? What does that mean?
Well, a swamp cooler is an evaporative cooler. We're taking, say pads, we're pouring water over them and drawing air. We've got a very high velocity fan that's pushing air through that, and we are introducing moisture. As that moisture evaporates, it removes the heat. So we get a cooling effect by simply introducing that moisture, which is a wonderful thing here because it is dry, and letting it evaporate. So swamp coolers work great when it's nice and cool, when we've got a low dew point, but you start getting that dew point up into the 50s and they're pretty much ineffective at that point. But when it's dry, they are absolutely wonderful and very low power consumption.
There you go. So it's a way of cooling. And where we're trying to go with that is, when you have a fuel that can evaporate easily, it cools the piston. Dr. Andy Randolph, the very smart guy from ECR, gave a talk about NASCAR engines years ago. I think it was at UNCC or something like that. And was talking about the fact that, hey, we run these engines about 6% rich, right? Well, half of that is just to try to get more power, right? We found that we can run them a little bit rich. they make a little more power. Just more fuel to burn, right? We can do it. But the other 3% was to cool the piston.
It's the cooling effect.
Right. That we know the limit of the durability of the engine is keeping that piston alive. So we have to be able to make sure we do that. So we're keeping the piston cool. Now, all this talk about vapor pressure and why it matters and all this, Keith, explain to them, what does this have to do with the piston ring, and why are we so passionate about fuel vaporization and all this? Because there's a reason.
There's absolutely a reason. And that reason is, we look at a lot of parts that come from a lot of customers that they have again, we'll go back to the redheaded stepchild, a perceived piston ring problem. Engine was running great. We go to this racetrack, we have no problems. Then we go to this racetrack, same carburetor, same timing, same tune-up, everything's great. And we're having these issues. At that point, hey, once this thing's apart, you need to get these parts back to me. Let me take a look at them, see what's going on. And I'm seeing rings that have, they've either worn the face off the ring, they've been needled, they're losing their tension. And we simply go down and, well, why were they fine at this racetrack, but they're not fine at that racetrack? By the customer, we didn't change anything. Everything's great. Nothing changed.
100 octane fuel everywhere we go.
Yep, we're running high 100 octane fuel everywhere we go. But what we find out is we're running this brand at that racetrack. We're running this brand at this racetrack. Maybe we borrowed some from another guy because the guy at the track was out of fuel. And this is what it comes down to. Not all fuels are created the same, and they can play absolute havoc with your piston rings if they will not vaporize. Because as Lake just said, if it's not vaporizing, it's not cooling. It's not atomizing, and we're actually going, even though we're putting fuel in, the engine's going lean because it's not able to combust that fuel.
Back to what we said at the very beginning, fuel is the enemy of your oil. And what I mean by that is the most important property and characteristic of an oil is viscosity. That's what actually helps kind of keep the parts separate. It provides the lubrication, right?
Absolutely.
And so the job of the oil isn't just to be a lubricant, right?
Nope.
Oil is a coolant. It actually is a seal, right? So think about a rear main seal. The actual piece of plastic or rubber, whatever, doesn't touch the crankshaft. Actually, it shouldn't touch the crankshaft.
Not supposed to.
Right. There needs to be a small gap in there. And it's the surface tension of the oil within that gap that actually provides the last little bit of seal.
Yep.
So the same thing happens with the piston ring, right? So if we were to draw a cylinder, right? So if this is the cylinder, I'm trying to make sure it can be seen here, Jeff. If that's the cylinder wall, and let's just say this is the piston ring, right? And we got our ring here, and we'll draw the piston around it to a degree, right? The oil that's in between here, you probably can't see it, can you, Jeff?
No, that looks good. It looks good. I see it.
So the oil that's right here between the cylinder wall and the face of the ring, that's the gasket.
That's what's sealed.
No different than, you wouldn't think about putting a cylinder head on a block and not put a gasket on it, at least not expect it to leak, right? So it's the gasket effect. So the key, and of course, here at Total Seal, we do a lot of work with the guys at Rottler because surface finish is what we talk about all day, every day. I mean, we are born again, baptized disciples of surface finish around here because there has to be the proper roughness, in this area, right? If we blow that up a little bit, what you're looking for are these valleys, right? You need some valleys in here, that surface roughness that you're getting from the abrasive, the hone, the crosshatch angle. Those valleys are what need to hold the oil to be that gasket. The trick is that liquid fuel washes the oil away. It lowers the viscosity of the oil, which does a couple of things. One, not only is it lowering the viscosity of the oil, which is affecting the wear and the seal here. Oh, by the way, it also affects everything else in your entire engine that's lubricated. I've been doing used oil analysis for a long time. We did it at Gibbs way back in the day, and we started a company to do it for racing people a few years ago. 9 times out of 10, Jeff, if there's a high level of wear within that sample, there's also a high level of fuel in that sample. It's really rare to see high wear metals in a used oil sample when the fuel dilution is normal. It's almost always high fuel was the first problem, then it led to everything else. So killing that ring seal is a bad problem that comes directly, and it's so easy, right, Keith?
It's easily corrected.
You know,
You've got to look at that surface finish. Conversation I had with a gentleman yesterday, and I know where Lake's going here, is simply also the cooling effect.
yes.
He keeps having a microwelding problem. This is an issue where the temperature inside the piston is actually getting to the point where the piston's becoming molten, and it's actually sticking to the ring. Once the ring sticks, it no longer has that ability to float on that cushion of oil and move and follow bore distortion, move as the cylinder is distorting. Blow-by gases start going down the side. That superheats the oil, kills the oil film immediately. And it all came down to how that cylinder is being honed. He's not retaining enough oil to keep that seal and to keep this part cooled. Once we corrected this, his microwelding problem went away. He thought he had a fuel curve problem, but data and all the analysis said, no, you don't. There's something else going on. That led to the conversation talking about fuel repressure and the cooling effect of getting the surface finishes right. And once that problem's corrected, problem gone.
Right. So hopefully anybody that's watching now kind of recognizes, hey, you know, fuel is a major consideration in all of this. Now, what can you do about that? Well, obviously the first thing is you need to make sure that for whatever your application you're doing, right, you need to have enough octane for the compression ratio that you're running.
Got to keep it out of knock.
Right. But number two, you need to have the right distillation curve, right? The right vapor pressure for your application. So a drag race application where the engines are cool, it's short duration, the water temperature never gets that high, the oil temperature never gets that high, you're going to need a higher vapor pressure fuel than say the exact same compression ratio engine, same displacement engine, could be the same, spark timing, but you're running a 400-mile endurance race. That's going to be completely different because the underhood temperatures could be much higher, all these things. So you would need a lower vapor pressure fuel to prevent vapor lock, right? So those are the aspects of the fuel that you got to fix. Once you've already determined the correct fuel for the application, then we actually have some resources that can help you and make that piston ring more durable. And then we can also have some recommendations in terms of surface tension. So Keith, talk about the different ring materials and coatings that are available and how that kind of stacks up against the different fuel options that are out there.
Well, exactly. We've got to look at
Excuse me right quick, guys.
Yes.
I'm loving what you're saying, but I want to ask a couple quick questions here. I haven't seen anybody. We got Jess Hewitt who said you got it right, talking about the winter blend, is now like 14 RVP, but I ain't got anybody else to ask the question, and you got my mind running here.
Okay.
I want to know when we're talking about finishing the cylinder wall.
Okay.
If I'm out here and I'm getting ready to do, you talk about the different types of applications, whether it's a drag racer, whether it's an oval track, whether it's off-road, endurance racing. What kind of finishes are you able to give me what I need to tell my engine guy to put on that micro finish or that the different deal so that I get it correct when it's end up being home? Okay.
Yes, we're really good at that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, you have the ability, and I just want to make sure that we can pick the phone up, call Total, say, this is what I'm doing. What do I need to be? What's the most important things? So I get the right cylinder wall home, properly before we start getting into the fuel. I mean, it's like, again, I could be a drag racer running a diesel engine. You know what I'm saying? I could be running methanol. I could be all the different fuels you're getting ready to jump off into. But it seems to me like the first thing is, if I need the input from you when I'm getting that block ready to what I need to have the block ready for.
Well, Mr. Hammond, you were reading our minds because
100%.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I just want to make sure that I hadn't lost you. I didn't want to get lost. Now we're going in the right direction, but I just felt like we were skipping over that point. I was always looking for that number. Hey, if you're going to do this, you need, just throw a number out there, whatever it would be. But I just wanted to know that how important that is.
You are 100% correct, because again, one of the things we like to say is make us your first call, because the more we know coming in the front door, we can help guide you with your machinist. You know, we get the phone call, we'll say after the fact, you know, took it to the shop, had it honed for the moly rings, and, you know, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, but, you know, we get this all the time, and, you know, give us the process. We need to know, what are you doing with this? Is this a Baja 1000 truck running a factory Chevrolet stock block, you know, or is this, you know, an aluminum Donovan block with a hard liner? You know, we need to know what it is we're working with for a foundation. What is that base? And then what is it that you're doing? What are your expectations? So that we can in turn guide you with those finish numbers. Because, you know, using that as an example, knowing if I'm going in with a soft block for a high duration application, I'm going to have to throw a ton of valley number in there, knowing that block is going to initially wear a lot during the break-in process. So I know where I want to start to get where I want to be at the end. If I start with a very hard liner, well, we're not going to see that initial break-in wear. So I can adjust those numbers. So again, that first call, whether it's the phone call, an email, whatever, you know, reach out to us. Say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm planning on doing with it. And then we can put together, you know, a formulation for you, not only from a cylinder finishing point of view, from, as Lake, you know, indicated, from a ring material point of view. What type of, you know, base metals do we need to work with? What kind of coatings do we need to work with? Is this a very dirty environment, or is this a, you know, an absolutely sterile environment? This helps guide us down the path, because we do have a lot of selections from, you know, different types of irons into different grades of steel into, you know, different types of coatings. Knowing that information up front is so easy of getting it right now instead of trying to fix it later.
No, you don't fix it later.
Got the markers going.
I see that. But you know, Keith,
Keep on
what
talking.
you keep
He
talking
knows
about
what I'm doing, so he can go ahead and set it up while I'm drawing it all out.
is
Because
the
you
fact
mentioned the
that, you know,
numbers, right? You got to have the right numbers. Well, what most people think about the numbers is maybe the grit of the abrasives, or maybe they're talking about, you know, RA, you know, roughness average. Unfortunately, Jeff, in this world, like we've already discussed, the different block hardnesses, the different things that are variables out there, you can't rely on grit abrasive or RA to tell you the truth about what your surface finish is.
Well, not just to pause you, this morning, you know, prior to this, we had a little quick conversation with Ed Keebler from Rottler Manufacturing, and we got talking about some abrasives, and he ran across a customer that has got some liners that are so hard. He asked us about the particular company. I knew what the hardness numbers were. He's like, I'm going to have new abrasives made, because we, you know, again, trying to hit those numbers, how unbelievably hard these cylinders are. If these ended up in, somebody will say, other than a person like Ed's hands, they would have gone in, hit it with their normal abrasives. You know, the visual, the look, hey, looks good, got some scratches in it. They would have sent it down the road, and that would have been a guaranteed failure.
So just to put some numbers out there that people may be familiar with. So let's say you go in with a 320 grit abrasive on a cast iron gray block. All right, you're going to run that, and it might throw out what we call an RVK, the valley number, right? Because what we're talking about here in this finish process is, you know, the piston ring is going to run on the top of that surface. So a really high, we call it peak, RPK, is going to cause a lot of ring wear. It can cause a lot of trash that can lead to microwelding, all these kind of things, right? So you want to kind of a lower RPK. Well, then the flip side of that is your RVK is the valley that holds the oil. All right, so that's the real key part for retaining that oil, to be the lubricant, to help conduct that heat, you know, do all the things for the ring, to be the gasket and to be the lubricant and the coolant, right? For the oil can do its job. So that hard block, or say that cast iron block with a 320 abrasive, it's going to throw a number around what, about 40, 45, maybe 50 at best.
Absolutely.
Okay, which is not a bad number. Not horrible. Not a bad number, right? It can, for a moly ring or a steel ring, that number will work for a general purpose application. The trick is, now you put a hard block in there or a really hardened liner, that same abrasive, you might be lucky to get an RVK of 20 or 25 out of that.
On a good day.
Yeah. So I had the same abrasive, the same home, same number of strokes. I got the same crosshatch angle.
Looks good.
It looks good, but you don't have enough valley. So as a result, that cylinder finish will not last. The durability of that engine will not be there because of that. And like to Ed's point, we were talking about this morning, you were thinking, these guys are having to go down from say a 320, way beyond a 280, down past a 220. We're talking in the 180s, 150s. Some guys, back to your point, Jeff, about the diesels, 80 grit to create enough valley to hold enough oil, because the key thing is based on the type of fuel you run
And amount.
that's the key. So we all know that, gasoline, stoichiometric ratio for gasoline is about 14.7, right? When you go to methanol, which I think is what 7.6 or 6.7, something like that.
Yep.
Whatever the number is, right? It's basically double the amount of fuel. So if I'm going to put twice the volume of fuel through the engine, if I'm running methanol versus gasoline. Okay, back to my poor piston ring and my cylinder finish. Guess what? For a methanol fueled engine, I need more valley, like 50% more valley than a gasoline engine does, because I have to have enough oil retention to offset the volume of fuel you're pumping through it. And then these crazy turbo diesel guys, I mean, there is copious amounts of fuel.
Just stand on top and just pour it down through. We had the conversation this morning.
Is that the same thing? We're heading in the direction of nitro with stuff like that that's in the fuel?
100%. We were talking about a gentleman this morning runs and we'll say normally aspirated injected alcohol. And, talking about these RVK numbers, we've had numbers that we've used as I'll call it the guideline for years and years, but we're really starting to push the RVK numbers into territories that traditionally we did not in the past. And guess what? It just keeps getting better. We're better ring seal, better life. If it's a vacuum motor, we're pulling better vacuum numbers, because not only have the block hardness has changed, the oils have changed significantly. The type of oil we're running today, even though the viscosity numbers may be the same, is not the oil we ran 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah, these oils are getting so much better in terms of lubricity and their durability. You think about, 20 years ago, 2000, 2002 NASCAR era.
That's scary.
Right? I know, that's crazy to think that. These engines were one race motors. I mean, in 2000, right, we still had race motors and qualifying motors.
Yep.
So those engines would last one race, right? And those were, 043, duct moly type ring. And in the race, the motor would be down, 5-8 horsepower. You had to rebuild it the next time. Well, today we're running rings that are half that thickness, 0.5 millimeter, top rings and some cup stuff. So that's half the thickness of an 043, but it's not a duct moly ring anymore. It's a steel ring that's PVD coated, and we've got way better oils. They're, the viscosity back in 2000 was a lot of guys ran 2050 for the race stuff. Well, now there's engines running 0.16 out there in a cup deal, and they're running 0.5 millimeter rings. And oh, by the way, these engines are now lasting 1,600 race miles with no loss of power.
Yeah, still good coming out.
Right. So what we're doing is I always call it ring seal soup. You can go to Indianapolis and go to St. Elmo's and have a nice steak dinner. And, if you didn't like the salad, you didn't like the, shrimp cocktail, whatever, you don't have to eat it. You can just eat your steak and whatever. If you order soup, buddy, either you like the soup or you don't like the soup. And it's the piston ring, the cylinder finish, the oil, all working together is what creates that ring seal. It's soup, not steak. So you've got to figure in all these variables,
all the ingredients.
Yes, the fuel choice, the oil choice, all of this matters. And that's where you really can unlock big time power gains, but there's also tremendous durability gains by getting this right.
Now, one of the things that also, Jeff, you had mentioned about nitro a few weeks back, actually probably a couple months now, had the opportunity to work with one of the fuel teams on their at-track service. What they do with this thing between rounds, and had the opportunity to look at their sleeves fresh out of the box, how they were coming out. Finishes were not bad. Would I like to see a little more RVK on them? Yeah, I would like to see a little higher number there, but they weren't bad. They really weren't too bad. Coming out of the first pass, they still weren't too bad. They had what I would consider normal wear in the liner, but their normal in between, round service, they came in with a ball hone.
Yep.
Dingle balled that cylinder, did what they thought was the right thing to do, and absolutely annihilated what was left for a finish. They took the RVK numbers and cut them in half, simply because they're not using, I'm not opposed to the ball hone. I like ball hones,
Right.
but they're using the wrong one.
Grit. Yeah.
It's not the right grit. It's not the right abrasive for the hardness of that liner. All they did was, I would use a weird, not a turret. They put a mega plateau or an extreme plateau on that cylinder, which was not right for what they're doing, and simply had them make the correction. You want this hone, this ball hone, this grit, this abrasive, and game changer.
Right. Because before
You don't, what you're saying is you don't want to polish it. You want to make sure you scuff it back up.
You want to make sure you keep that valley in there. You want to
Right.
make sure that you kept that valley. And if they did something in that past to knock that valley out, we got to get that valley back in there. That's the critical thing in a application where, we use, that copious amounts of fuel are going through it. We've got to make sure that RVK number is maintained. And we either have to do that by having a lot of RVK to start with so we can get through that initial run process, or be able to restore that in between passes.
So like we were saying, to put some hard numbers on it, for a general purpose type application, an RVK of like 45 to 50, and that's in micro inches, using a profilometer. Because that's the only way to do this, right? If you're not using a profilometer, you're guessing. You can't eyeball this stuff. You have to have a proper tool to measure it.
And we are talking micro inches.
Yeah, micro inches, right. So 45 to 50 micro inches is what you really want to see for a general purpose application. Now, you go to say a methanol engine, and we were talking about this morning, I mean, you're talking about numbers up now 60 to 70.
Yeah.
NA. NA with methanol. So you're making that percentage change we talked about because of the additional fuel. Then we've got some guys back to the crazy diesel stuff. These guys are 140 plus, right, Keith?
Yep, absolutely. Some of them are in the 150 range. And again, we've talked about this, having nothing but ring issues. Again, prior to Lake coming to work for us, we, always had a great relationship. I had a particular customer. We're having all these problems. We've tried different materials, different coatings. Lake's formulating oil specifically for them. And everything we do makes a little bit of a difference, but nothing significant.
Right.
The problem shouldn't be there. So the last piece of that pie was that cylinder finish. And it's like, we've got to get that number up higher. And we kept getting it higher and higher into territories that if you'd asked me a year before, nothing would ever need that much. Guess what? It kept getting better and a little better. And to the point that he had to have custom abrasives made because we couldn't get the numbers that high with off the shelf stuff. He had custom abrasives made. We start landing in numbers here. And guess what? Boom, boom, perfect. No blow by, less than a pound of crankcase pressure. And keep in mind, folks, we're talking 4,000 plus horsepower on diesel, and absolutely brilliant. No failures, gets it off the dyno, many hooks, no problems, all cylinder finish.
Right. And the other kind of aspect of this too, you just kind of hit on, is the choice of oil. And because all these parameters are so important, having the correct lubricant for break-in is absolutely critical in terms of maximizing this. I'm not saying you can't put whatever you want to in there. You could, but the consistency and the quality of your results will vary. That's all I'm going to say a disclaimer on that. But when you use I'm going to call it a proper break-in oil, and I'm going to define that for a second. A proper break-in oil is an oil without friction modifiers, without things that increase the lubricity of the oil. Just like a flat tappet cam, you're trying to break it in and mate those two surfaces. That's what we're doing. We're trying to mate these surfaces. It's the final break-in process, or the final machining process is happening in the engine. So you want an oil that has a good amount of anti-scuff, a good amount of anti-wear, but without friction modifiers. And one of the things we found too is a lot of the detergent additives in the motor oils that are designed to help keep things clean and extend oil life, those detergent additives compete against the anti-scuff, against the anti-wear additives for these surfaces. So what happens is they inhibit the ability of like the ZDP, which is the primary anti-scuff, anti-wear additive. And when I say ZDP, for most people, that means zinc in your oil, right? So the zinc in the oil is really technically ZDP. The detergents compete against the zinc. So during break-in, you really want a low detergent oil. You know, I remember those old guys who always say, "Oh, you got to use straight 30 non-detergent to break in an engine."
Yep.
Well, it wasn't anything magic about straight 30. But there was something to the non-detergent part, because the old oils still had some zinc in them. Without any detergent, that balance of the chemistries was correct, and it let the rings and the cylinder finishes made in properly and make everything happy. So the wisdom of the ages is still true. So in today's world, there are lots of brands of break-in oils available. The key is selecting one not that just has the highest level of zinc, but you want to look at that zinc detergent ratio, and you want a low detergent, high zinc oil without friction modifiers. That makes all of this work way better. And I've seen it over and over again. I got tons of personal experience on it, and baby, it can make a huge difference if you get that part wrong. You can have everything else right and get the oil wrong, and you will still struggle. All of a sudden, you change the oil and you had everything else right. It's like the heavens opened and then the angels sang.
Well, I want to back that up because, and Lake will know the dates because I don't know the dates, but when, when the Fed jumped in and made us change all the oils.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s, and it spun this industry out because none of us knew what was going on.
Yep.
I've never had a problem seating up rings. I've never had a problem on the dyno, and now I can't get anything off that dyno. The solution at that time was a lot of people jumped into the diesel oils.
Right.
And that was kind of the salvation. And it was at that time because we didn't know better.
For flat tappet cams, it had a little more zinc than off the shelf oil. So it definitely was a step in the right direction.
But the detergent packages today, what a lot of guys don't realize, and I had a gentleman about a week ago, he just keeps having these problems. I'm like, what are you using for a break-in? And he's been stuck on that diesel. It's like, no, you got to get away from that. I know
high detergent.
They are really high detergent, and I'll let you expand on that.
Yeah, because diesels, because of all the soot, right, and diesel fuel being dirtier than gasoline, you have to have a higher detergent level in the oil to keep the engine clean. Because what can happen in a diesel engine is you get bore polishing. You get so much soot and carbon buildup in the engine that it basically polishes the bore, kills all the valley.
Yep.
How about that, right? And it makes the engine have a high blow by, and again, kills the oil. The engine won't run anymore. So they're really conscious of that in the diesel world. So they're putting in tons of detergent and dispersant additives to make sure to keep all that clean so they don't end up with bore polishing. So it's having the right chemistry for the application is always the key. That's one of the things as an oil guy, I always preach on. Do not start with the brand. Never start your oil choice with the brand first. Begin with the application. Application always dictates chemistry. Once you've figured out the right chemistry for the application, then you can choose the brand you trust to deliver that chemistry consistently. That way, you know that, hey, this is my go-to, right? If I got this heat range spark plug and I put it in and I put this engine at 32 degrees timing, I know I'm going to get X, right? You need that same level of trust in your oil brand. But the key is you got to have the right chemistry for the application. That's why break-in oil is different than qualifying oil, which is different than, an endurance racing oil. So way beyond viscosity, we got to think chemistry first. So I'm throwing two giant bombs out there in the industry today, right? Octane doesn't matter and viscosity doesn't matter, right? Vapor pressure and chemistry is all that matters. Well, those are important choices. All of these things are important, but you just got to not lock in on one item and say, well, this is the only thing that matters. No, pretty much, as you know, Jeff, in your experience, everything matters, unfortunately.
It's a package.
It's a package, and it's all got to be right for it to win and go to the front.
No, you guys, you're spot on. And I don't want to, excuse me, we got one of our panelists, Tom Bogner, who's been following us along. And he says, we see ring seal increase right away using break-in oil. Horsepower and vacuum also increase when swapping to the race oils.
Right.
So he's saying these additives fight for the same surface. You know, that's what you're doing here. You are lapping the surfaces in and then letting them have that opportunity to mate up, make happy music. And then when you put the other additive or the oil with your race additives and everything in it, all of a sudden it makes that thing run just like a sewing machine. It just takes all
he's spot on. That's it. When you do that process, just like he described, you run it in on break-in oil, get everything happy and good, and then you swap over the race oil, baby, she's going to jump up again. And, you know, some guys, Jeff, you know, they'll put break-in oil the first time in, say, a build type that they're used to building, and they kind of know what number they should see. And sometimes they're like, I don't like that break-in oil because the power was down.
I'm off.
He was off a little bit. I'm like, just do it my way.
See, they're missing the point.
Right. Then put your race oil in there. Then you're going to see that it's going to jump up. And in the net effect, by going the right process, you're going to make more power than you were before. You just got to be patient and give it the time to reach that level.
Because
Tom says the same. You guys are spot on.
Because a burnished cylinder, folks, I mean, if you're using the wrong break-in oil, the wrong combination of soup, as Lake's been saying, if it burnishes that cylinder wall during that run-in process, it's never coming back.
No,
it will run, it will go out there and do its thing, but is it ever going to be at that peak of performance? The lowest blow-by numbers, the best vacuum numbers, it's never going to be there, because the only way you're going to restore that finish back is to rehone it. It's not going to come back on its own.
Right. And the good thing about piston rings in this, at least if you do mess it up, you can rehone it and you throw a new set of rings in there.
Quick touch up.
Way better than a flat tap at cam, because when you mess that up, buddy, you mess up a lot of stuff.
It's over. It's over.
Camshaft deal can be really painful. But hopefully what people are listening and catching on to is that fuel choice is really big. That once you determine the correct fuel for your application, now based on if it's gasoline or methanol or diesel, you need to start thinking about your RVK numbers based on that. And then you're going to make the choice of viscosity of your oil based on your engine operating temperature. One thing about oil, because it's real common. People would say, okay, I'm going to run a 2050. Well, what does a 2050 mean? Well, it means it's a 20 when it's cold and a 50 when it's hot. Nope. If you think about that, that means it got thicker as it got hotter. That doesn't happen. If you take your Aunt Jemima syrup or whatever, you take it out of the refrigerator and you put it on your hot pancakes, it thins out. Any
that flow characteristic has changed.
Yeah. All oils.
It's not on the pancake anymore, It's on the plate.
Right. So if this is temperature down here, right, we're going to have increasing temperature on this axis, and we got viscosity on this axis. As temperature increases, viscosity decreases, always. What we're talking about in multi-grade oils, the number before the W, because W actually stands for winter, not for weight. That's a cold cranking measurement. So where the number after the W is a true flow measurement, where you're actually taking the oil, you're heating the oil up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, boiling point of water, for those who are curious, right? And then you're flowing it and you're measuring the flow rate from point A to point B. The number before the W is a cold cranking measurement, where you're taking the oil and you're chilling it down to temperatures below freezing. And you're measuring the amount of torque it takes. So say a 10W versus a 20W, what it means is a 10W can still rotate, still crank the engine successfully at a much colder temperature than a 20W. Now, I've forgotten the exact numbers in my head. I used to know them like that. So I'm not even going to try to quote the numbers because I know I'll get them wrong. But the idea is that as you go down lower in the number before the W, the colder it can be outside. A good example, like for the sports car world. So there's a 10W40, right? Which you're all familiar with that. There's also 5W40s out there. You can go to the parts store and you can find a 0W40. Well, all three of those oils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit all flow within the spec of an SAE 40 at 212. The difference is, as it gets colder, eventually that 10W is going to get too thick to flow properly for your engine to crank in, say, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada in January.
Yeah, little chilly.
Good example, right? Where it can be literally negative 20 degrees, negative 30 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, without the wind chill.
Right, without the wind chill, which by the way, I think at around negative 35, it's the same number, right? So negative 35 Fahrenheit, negative 35 Celsius, like the same number, somewhere around there. Really freaking cold is what I'm saying. A 5W can go colder temperature outside and still be okay. And the 0W can go even further. Now, so those are the key things to understand. So that if I'm running, say, a pro stock car, right, this is a good one to think about, right? A pro stock car, Matt Hartford, our CEO, is a pro stock drag racer. So they push that car up to the starting line and they fire the engine. What's the water temperature in that engine, Keith, when they go into the water box?
You're going to be more than likely, it's going to heat it up just a little bit. They try to come out of the pits somewhere in the mid 35 to 37 degree range. So I got to say they hit the water probably in the low 40s.
Okay. 40 degrees Fahrenheit, not Celsius.
Yep.
Right. So by the time they do the burnout, they get to the end of the track. What's that water temperature at maybe the end of the track?
Oh, on a bad day, it's 100.
100 degrees. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in a drag race application, because you're not really running the engine long, your oil temperature will usually be the same or lower than your water temperature, which, Jeff, in our NASCAR deal, right? When you run so far, guess what? We know it flips over. Oil temperature is always hotter than your water temperature. So a 0W, qualifying oil at 100 degrees Fahrenheit is about what they call 10 centistokes. So that's just a flow measurement, right? So we're just going to call that number 10 centistokes. Guess what? A 10W30 at 212 degrees Fahrenheit is also just about 10 centistokes. So you got this pro stock car at 100 degrees F running a 0W oil, right? We got this guy that's we'll call it just a sportsman racer or whatever, autocross guy, whatever. And he's running 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's a 10W30. And then you got a buddy like my guy, Ron Shaver, sprint car guy, right? They go out there, 410 cubic inches, tracks locked down, all this. Well, they're going to run probably like about 2050 or 2550, some of these guys,
50,
right?
2550.
Some of these sprint car guys. Guess what? Those engines are going to run about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, at 300 degrees Fahrenheit, that 20W50, it's going to be pretty daggum close, about 10 centistokes. So you got three completely different viscosity grades in three completely different engines running three different temperatures, but they all end up around the same number in terms of flow rate. And the point I'm trying to get at is understand your application, what your water temperature is, and all that before you choose. Because that number, that 10 centistoke number, is usually a pretty safe place to be. If you can get lower than that, and there's some people out there who are watching like, my numbers are lower than that. Yeah, they are. I know that, but I'm just saying in general terms, right? That this is a safe place. You can push those things down 7, 8, even lower than that sometimes, and get away with it if all your surface finishes and coatings are right.
Everything's right.
Right. There's some room to be gained there. That's a topic for another day. But understand your temperature of your application. Let that dictate the viscosity. That way you've got the correct viscosity for your surface finish. Now, all of a sudden, your piston rings can be super happy, which means you're going to be able to maintain the ring seal, which is going to maintain the performance. Because here's the other thing about oil and piston ring relationship. As I said earlier, fuel is the enemy of your oil. Blow-by is also the enemy of your oil. So if I can make sure that I'm not destroying my oil with fuel and I got good ring seal, that means I'm not putting extra temperature into it. Because when you have bad ring seal, I've seen it on the dyno not long ago. When you lose ring seal, your oil temperature goes up quickly and your oil life goes down. Every 10 degrees Fahrenheit, you increase your oil temperature, you cut your oil life in half.
Yep.
Think about that for a second. Every 10 degrees in temperature, you increase oil temperature, right? If it goes from 210 to 220, you cut the useful life of that oil in half because oxidation rate doubles essentially every 10 degrees.
Well, guys, it has been a ton of information on such a very simple, this is what we're talking about. Is this
about this little bitty thing, right? This little thin piston ring
that
looks like
thing
nothing,
right there. Excuse me. And we've learned so much. And if you didn't, then you weren't listening because I thought it was very informative. And I could visualize Junior Johnson and Harold Elliott my days working in the engine room up there with those guys, fitting rings and working and honing cylinders. And these guys saying, don't nobody else touch anything. I'm doing this. I know what I'm looking for. And they usually did a pretty dang good job. They knew what qualifying stuff they could get by with. They knew what they had to have for 600 miles at Charlotte. So there's a mad science out there that's still going on today that started way back when, and the ground rules are still the same. That's exactly what you have told me, is that listen to what I'm telling you. This thing starts in the beginning. When you start trying to build an engine, you need to start talking to the people who make the parts and pieces that assemble that engine, and that includes pistons, the piston rings. Everything goes together. And if you don't have the right package to put it together, all you're doing is wasting your money and your time.
Yep. You know,
So
Junior, he would, this is heresy, right, Jeff? We're sitting here sharing all these secrets. In the old days, this had got you blackballed for talking about this stuff. Isn't it amazing in today's era that we can just talk freely about this and not have any concerns? Like, hey, man, we learned these lessons the hard way years ago. Let us help you shortcut the learning curve here so that you can get closer to achieving your dreams and aspirations without all the heartache and headache that we all had to go through for years to learn this stuff.
And last but not least, I want to say it like this, like, listen to what we're telling you, folks, and you might even enjoy going to the racetrack.
Exactly.
Exactly. Guys, thank you very much. I'm going to turn this back over to Francis.
Thanks to Judy and Francique and everybody at EPARTRADE for giving us this platform to be able to share. You know, it's one thing that we would feel comfortable with sharing, but if you have no platform to share, it's kind of useless, right?
Exactly right. And again, I think I told them in the very beginning when I got to know and understand what the concept was, I said, this right here is better. It's better than any computer, because we're able to sit here and talk amongst ourselves, listen, ask questions, and have a direct source to your company or to other companies around the world to get more information. Like we say, we're giving you opportunity to find shortcuts that'll make your racing a lot more fun.
Right. I've just got to, add on to what Jeff just said is having a venue like this, having a format like this, regardless of whether we're talking about piston rings or it's another person talking about camshafts or carburetors, let me tell you, this inspires thought, because as soon as we're done with this, trust me, that phone is ringing because they're calling, they're asking questions. This has allowed us to reach people that in no other way would we reach these audiences and reach these people. So thank you all for, allowing us to be here, speak about this, and providing us this, this avenue to bring this information out.
Right.
In closing, I want to make one comment. Elaine, through this era, can you imagine what Smokey Unit could have done with this era?
Oh, just
he would be the master here. He would be the master. He would be eating it up. He really would.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
He'd be there.
Thanks,
been
guys.
there, done that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. It means a lot to us. And the beauty of those is they are recorded. So the people who watch the live sessions actually go on the platform, on our YouTube channel, through our newsletter, and it's fun to see how many views those webinars get after they have been recorded. So thank you very much for being with us today. Lake and Keith will have you back, I believe, at the end of June for another webinar. So thank you very much for being with us today. It has been recorded. It will be posted on the EPARTRADE platform later today, as well as our YouTube channel. We also pushed the Total Seals products back on the homepage of EPARTRADE, so please take advantage of it. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week and we'll be talking valve train with Engine Industries. Thank you very much and let's go racing. Bye.
Thank you.
Registering on EPARTRADE is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use EPARTRADE as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to EPARTRADE.